Well, hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome back. Jiu-Jitsu 2000 here today. I'm back. I hope you guys are doing great. I've got an interesting video for you once again. We're going to talk about Alone today. We're going to talk about Season 8, Episode 2. So this video will contain spoilers. We're talking about Alone, Grizzly Mountain. Again, I've got my notes with me, and let's just go ahead and get started. True wilderness can still be found, but it's hard to reach and dangerous when you get there. This is the quote that comes on the screen from Michelle Paver. Now, I like what they did in this episode of Alone. They basically, last episode, we saw the first 5 contestants, and in this episode, they basically backed up all the way to day 1. So we're going to see the other 5 contestants. So in this video today, we're going to talk about Coulter, Nate, Teresa, Michelle, and Jordan. So we're starting back on day 1 with Coulter. It's the drop. And he's talking about, I'm going to be alone for the next 2 months. He said, I learned about the show Alone 11 months ago from my mom. Wow, 11 months ago he found out about Alone, and here he is on the show. I'm like blown away by that. And then it goes into showing his kind of bio, his lifestyle, and I really enjoyed watching his lifestyle. I think that he's got a really cool lifestyle, good personality. And the next thing it shows, he's talking about, he's kind of walking around, looking around at his location, and there's a lot of bear activity, a lot of bear sign that he notices. So moving forward, again, day 1, 10 o'clock, Nate, the boat leaves, and I noticed in the background, it looked overcast. It looked like inclement weather possibly getting ready to roll in. And he says, he's going to go on a recon. I'm going to go take a look. Now, here's where I made a mistake. I know that Nate was a veteran. Okay, I thought he was a Marine Corps veteran, but I was wrong about that. He was a 24-year Army veteran. So, correction there. He has a wife and 5 kids. And then the next thing, kind of shows his bio and his life and stuff. And it was cool. I like kind of getting to see the characters, if you will, and kind of see into their private life a little bit. It's kind of cool that the show does that. And then it cuts back to the show, and he finds a game trail. I thought that was neat. Then he sees a grouse in a tree. The grouse is a little bit, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 feet. It's hard to tell from the camera angle, but it looks like the grouse is kind of up there, in the tree a little bit. Then it moves forward to 12 o'clock. Again, we're still on day 1 talking about Nate. He takes a shot with his bow at the grouse, and he missed. It is what it is. I probably would have missed too. But on day 1, and then he said something that I mildly disagree with. He said something about starting too soon or something like that. Like I got plenty of time to be out here, and here I go trying to get a grouse on the first day. I respectfully disagree with that statement, because I think from the second that you land, you are in survival show. You're in survival mode, and any kind of calorie that you can bring into your body, that is all going to be an asset to your overall effectiveness of being out there. So he said that he got ahead of himself or whatever, but I don't think so. So moving forward, we're going to talk about 1 o'clock, and we're looking at Teresa now. And she just got dropped, and she says, hello, solitude, it's quiet here. So she decides that she's going to look around and try to find a shelter location. And she said something very smart. Something that we heard someone else say last episode. I think it was Clay that said it. Don't quote me. But Teresa said, I want to make a separate cooking a place that's away from where I sleep. Does that sound familiar? I thought that was smart of her to say that. So now we're moving forward. It's day 2. We're going to be talking about Michelle now. She has some crickets that she found, and she's cooking them. And she decides she's going to eat these crickets. And I think that's smart. It might be gross, but I think it's very smart. So she says, I'm going to gather some edibles, and she finds some wild onion, and she finds some rose hips, and then she had a pretty good little bounty of wild edibles that she found. And then she sees a bear in the water swimming. The bear was like probably fishing or something. And the bear notices her and starts to come towards her. And then moving forward, 9:57 in the morning, we're still talking about Michelle. She's watching the bear and he's fishing, and she says, this is the biggest bear that I've ever seen. And I believe it. Bears are probably huge up there. Moving forward, day 2, little afternoon, talking about Teresa. She makes a comb for her hair, and she's combing her hair and using the viewfinder of the camera as a mirror. You know, she's looking at herself and combing her hair. So I thought that was cool, interesting. You know, self-care is good. That'll help keep your morale up. And she says, I'm going to camp by the shore, but she wants to build a pit house. I thought that was smart. And she talks about some of the benefits of pit houses. So that's what she plans. So she finds some grubs while digging, you know, little worms and stuff, and she decides to eat them and says that they taste like pine nuts, which is very smart because I've ate grubs before too, and to me they taste like almonds. So very interesting that she says that it's a nutty flavor, because it is. It really is. And some of them are delicious. And then she gets a nasty one, and she's talking about people saying that she's going to burn so many calories to make this pit house, right? She's talking about the naysayers out there. And, you know, it is what it is. People are probably going to be armchair quarterbacks. People that don't quite really, truly understand what's going on out there. And I noticed that she found a elk, looked like a shoulder blade or something, bone. She was using that to dig. So it was cool. She had a tool that she had found. Moving forward, we're on day 3 now. We're talking about Jordan. He finds some ants, and he's eating the ants, and he says, I wish I could collect a lot of these, and it would be a good source of, you know, like I said, checks and balances. He wants to bring in those calorie deposits. And he says that they taste like sour lemons. I've never ate ants, so I don't know. I couldn't say. And he decides he's going to start building a shelter. And then it goes into his bio a little bit. He has a son and a wife and lost a young daughter, I think he said 2.5 years ago. So unfortunate to lose such a young, beautiful child. You know, that's got to be hard. So he decides he's going to build a log cabin. And he gets to work on it. And it's looking really nice. I always get concerned when I see these elaborate shelters that require a lot of energy to build. But, you know, they're out there, and he wants something solid. He wants something that's going to keep the bears at bay. So I can't really blame the guy. Moving forward, we're still on day 3, 10:39. We're talking about Jordan still. He's just working away, and he hears a bear. And then he sees the bear, and then it moves forward a little, 5 or 6 more minutes later, still talking about Jordan, and he hears the bear growl, but he doesn't know where the bear went. He's lost visual contact with this bear. And then it moves forward to day 4, 7:28 in the morning. Jordan gets up, and he's looking around. He sees the bear sign where the bear was scratching or whatever, and it was only, he says, like 120 feet from his shelter. So that raises some concern, at least for me it would. I'd be like, well, I don't think I want these bears this close to my shelter. At least that's what I'd be thinking. And then we get 8 o'clock in the morning on day 4 still, talking about Coulter. So very interesting. He decides he's going to make a friction fire. And listen to this. He says, my mom told me to bring a ferro rod with me for the show. Why didn't you listen, my friend? Why didn't you listen? So I'm just busting in here. You know, I'm not really meaning that. I'm just giving him a hard time. So then he says, I hope that I can do bow drill for the next couple of months or I'm out of here. So he knows that friction fire is going to be one of the things that determines whether he stays or goes. Ooh, that's kind of sketchy right there. And like I said, we're on day 4, so we're barely getting started on this journey, and he's already at a point of awareness of the fact that fire could be a detrimental thing. I said that in my prediction video. Oh my gosh, it's exciting. And then he did say that, you know, the 4 days he's been out here, he's made multiple bow drill embers. So, and I could see his technique that he was using. It showed his hearth and it showed his technique, and it looks good. He knows what he's doing. So he's talking about building a boat. He says, I've never built a boat before. And remember, because he didn't bring a ferrocerium rod, the extra item that he brought was a tarp. So he says he's never built a boat before, but he's going to give it a shot. And from what we're already seeing, the boat looks nice. Moving forward, we're still on day 4, about a little bit after noon. We're talking about Nate, and he strung up the bolete mushrooms, and one of them is gone, he noticed. So something stole one of his mushrooms. He had a string of them hanging. So he decides he wants to go fishing, and he decides a good idea for fishing is to set up a trout line, which I thought was very, very smart. That's a passive way of fishing. You're not active fishing. So you could be doing other things while you're gathering fish if they're biting. So very, very smart. And I noticed that he made some flies or put some looked like orange or red paracord, like kind of frayed, kind of on the bottom end of the hook, like a fly or you know, some kind of lure or something. Looked pretty cool. Did a good job there. Moving forward, we're on day 5, talking about Teresa. She heard a bear. Very interesting. Then we're moving forward to about 8:30 in the morning. Still talking about her, and she's looking around for the bear. She says she wants to get going on the pit house. And then there's an annotation that comes on the screen, and it says, this is the first contestant to make a pit house in the history of Alone. And she talked about the pit house. She said that the pit house is very good because it keeps the temperature of the earth. So instead of starting at 0 degrees when you put your fire in there to warm it up, you're starting at like 50 degrees. So it takes a lot less to warm up this shelter. But it's a huge calorie expenditure because she had to dig a pit that's about waist deep. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of moving dirt, and that's a lot to do in a day, in one day. So tremendous amount of calories. And she did say that before. She said, I'm sure there's naysayers out there going to be giving me a hard time about this, but I know what I'm doing. So all we can do is trust that she knows what she's doing out there. And then she feels herself already losing weight. She says that this pit house is a bit of a gamble. Says that once the shelter's done, though, it's going to be food, 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 food. And I agree with that. I agree with her statement on that and with her thought process. And it gives a glimpse of the shelter, and it looks really nice. Her thought process is on point. Because a lot of people, when they first get there, they say that the experience is physical. And then it gets mental. And I believe that because I've done multiple day trips too with minimal calories, and it's physical in the beginning, and it does turn into a mental game. So I'm excited to see how it unfolds for her. Moving forward, we're on day 5 still, 3:37 in the afternoon, talking about Jordan. and he's out fishing, and he says cheeseburgers is his favorite food. How can you not love that guy? You know, I love cheeseburgers too. He says, I wish I could cast my line out there and just pull in a cheeseburger. I thought that was funny. So he's out there fishing, and it looks, from the footage, it looks like it's starting to get windy because you're starting to see the water getting a little choppy, stuff like that. And it does. It starts, the wind kicks up, and he kind of says, well, I'm not going to fish anymore right now. It was just, the water was too shallow, so he decides to explore the shoreline. He wants to look at his area and see if there's maybe a better place where he might be more effective at fishing. So he goes for a hike, and he's talking about, you know, I want to work on my cabin, but I need to find, you know, a better place where I could possibly fish. So yeah, he's out there. He's hungry, and he says there's no good fishing locations here. All the water's shallow. And it's just the luck of the draw, really, of who gets what spots. So he's already checked out his whole shoreline, and it's not the best location. So I kind of feel for him. He did find an aluminum can while he was out there, and then he says that there's a storm coming, and then it starts raining, and he's like 2 miles away from his camp. And then he talks about, you know, when I get to my camp, it's going to be under a tarp. I need to get my shelter finished. I want a real permanent type structure. And I can't blame him. You know, the weather's going to be bad, and it's windy and all this, and it's terrible. And he says, this was a huge reminder for me to stay put and get my shelter done. You know, going out and getting in all that rain and everything. So we're moving forward. We're on day 6, talking about Michelle. She made a bushcraft chair, and she was sitting in the chair talking about how comfortable that felt. And I can agree with her on that. When I did my 5-day, I think it was, I built a table and I built a chair, and it really does. It boosts your morale to have some luxuries out there. To have a chair, to have a table, to have something. It really does. It helps make you feel better out there. It really does. And then she says she's going to get onto her shelter. She's going to start building a shelter. And she's talking about making 2 large tripods and putting a ridge pole up between them. That is the exact type shelter that I built when I did my Pathfinder training. So if you want to see those videos, take a look at my playlist. It's called Phase 1 or Pathfinder School or something like that. Take a look at those videos. But that's the exact kind of shelter that she's planning to build. So we're moving forward. It's day 6, 3 o'clock. We're talking about Coulter. His boat is starting to look good. He decides to put the skin on it, and he's using this black tarp for the skin, and the boat looks nice. For a person who's never made a boat before, it's impressive. He drops his knife, and he said the knife went down blade first, right into the tarp. But he got lucky, it didn't cut it. Then he goes to the other side of it, and he does it again. I'm like, man, and then he's like, dude, I better put my knife away before I mess something up. I like his personality. He's a good character. And he talks about building a stable boat. And he talks about all the reasons, you know, the safety concerns. You know, if I build a boat and it tips me, it could be the end of my journey out here. I'll be lucky if I keep my life, you know. And so he's understanding, and he's very well aware at the concerns and the safety and all this of having a good stable boat. Very smart on his part. And he's making a paddle, and he knows that this is a risk to take a boat out on the water. So he decides he's going to test the boat, and it looks good, looks solid, ain't bringing in any water. He put some ribs in there. I mean, it looks like he knows what he's doing. But he says this boat is really tipsy, and it needs a outrigger. I thought that was very, very smart of him. He's happy. An outrigger is going to make that boat very stable. I mean, if you think about like the Polynesian culture up in Hawaii and stuff like that, look at a lot of those boats that they made. They all had outriggers on them. So Coulter's not far away from being on par with what a lot of people are doing when it comes to making boats and going on out on the water. You know, very smart. So now we're moving forward. We're on day 7. Now remember, we have 9 people left now. So it's 8:32 in the morning, and now the show's basically taken off from where we are currently. We're caught up on all 10 of the participants. We're talking about Nate. He's watching the squirrel, and I think that's the squirrel that stole his mushroom. And he says, I want my permanent shelter away from the shoreline. An A-frame that's smaller, that I can heat easily, small space. And I think that's smart. A small space is good, because you can really, with your body heat alone, and then he's talking about putting boughs down for insulation factor. Very smart on his part. I think he's on point. And then it shows his shelter, and the shelter is very small. It's very small. I think he's going to get tired of this space being so small, and it might play an edge on him psychologically. I don't know. We're going to find out. So he decides he's going to go check his fishing lines, and he sees it kind of bobbing down, and he says, I got a fish on there. So he pulls it in, and yeah, he's got a nice bull trout. Very nice. It's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon on day 7. He has a bull trout, so he guts that fish, and he's going to eat good tonight. That fish was a pretty good sized fish. So he decides that he wants to find out if he's the man that he thinks he is. This is really the purpose of him being on the show. He says, I want to find out if I'm who I think I am. And that's basically the end of episode 2. It was a great episode. So folks, I want to say thank you for joining me today on this video of Alone Season 8 Episode 2. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, please feel free to check my playlist and look for the Pathfinder School or Phase 1. You'll enjoy those videos, and you'll get a glimpse of the 2 A-frame tripod shelter type that I was talking about earlier. Also, please make sure to leave comments down below and let me know what your thoughts are on the show so far. I love reading the comments. With all that being said, folks, I hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye for now. See you next week.